start. Welcome you to Prichard's Distillery in Kelso, Tennessee, home of Tennessee's third largest legal distillery. We often refer to that because there might be somebody out in the woods there that might have something bigger than we do. But we're located in Tennessee, making rum. And of course, a lot of people wonder why we make rum in Tennessee, in the heart of whiskey country. Somebody wrote an article recently about being in the shadow of my big brother Jack up the road, and I kind of got laughing at him when he drove by Jack Daniels up there and he looked at the warehouse and kind of realized that the angel share going on in those Jack Daniels warehouses up there were probably equivalent to our entire year's production of rum here in this little distillery in Kelso, Tennessee. But being that we are in Tennessee making rum, to really just address the question of why we're making rum in Tennessee. Rum was this country's largest export prior to the American Revolution. Rum, it was the fire of the American Revolution. Rum, it was America's largest product prior. There were over 100 rum distilleries in New England alone, and we like to say that all of that yo-ho-ho and a bottle of rum business, they were drinking rum made. The reason that we decided to make rum here in Tennessee was, first of all, I'm a bit of a history buff, and as we learned about the history of rum, we found out the character of rum that was made 200, 250 years ago was very, very different than the rums that we have come to enjoy today. The rums 250 years ago lasted somewhat like you might put on your pancakes and cornbread, 90 to 95% fermentable sugars. Somebody once asked me, what's the other 5%? And I said, that's easy, that's called vitamins and minerals. So the molasses that we use is a sweet table grade molasses that makes the rum more like brandy. Thomas Jefferson kept over 100 bottles of rum in his wine cellar, and we like to think of that as being the poor man's brandy. It's kind of a little twist on the words there because everybody knows that Thomas Jefferson had financial problems. But the rum that they drank in New England was very much at home in a brandy snifter, and that's pretty much what we're making here today is a well-aged fine rum that has the character of almost a cognac or brandy. You contrast that with the rums that are made largely in the tropics today. There might be 2,000 rum distilleries in the world, and this might be the only distillery in the world that's making rum out of sweet molasses. But the truth of the matter is virtually all of the other rum distilleries, with some exceptions, are making rums out of a product called blackstrap. Blackstrap is nothing more than the residue from the sugar refining industry. We like to think that blackstrap has three major uses. Three uses being, we of course make a lot of rum out of it. We put it on animal feed to give horses and cattle a source of carbohydrates, and in Africa they put it on the roads to keep the dust down. So the types of rum that we're drinking today that are very, very different. Once you undertake the task of trying to build a distillery, well, I'll even go back a little further than that. The idea of making rum in Tennessee goes back to about 1993, 94, when I had a cousin of mine who suggested that we make rum out of locally grown sorghum molasses. Well, unfortunately, the ATF, now referred to as the TTB, or the Tax and Trade Bureau, they have regulations that provide nomenclature for the various distilled spirits, and rum is generally defined as the product of the sugarcane plant, and making it out of any other type of sugar other than sugarcane would have required almost an act of Congress to expand the nomenclature or the definitions of what rum really is. It it tastes different. I have some in the bottle over there. You can taste it. It's more mild. It really makes a good rum. But at any rate, one day in 1996, it was in December of 96, my wife came home and she says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Connie, I'm making rum. You want to taste?" And she took one sip and she says, "Ooh, that's good." So I had my first compliment from my worst critic, and then I happened to have a class reunion in 1997, and one of my classmates owned a liquor distributing company, and as we were sitting there across from the table, we got to carrying on the conversation about what I'm doing, and I happened to mention to him that I was making rum, and he said, "Well, bring me some." And I said, "Okay." About 3 weeks later, he called me up and he said, "Phil, I've got 2 questions. When are you going in business and what's it going to cost me?" I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Phil, you're going to make a serious mistake if you don't pursue this as a commercial venture. You're making literally one of the best rums in the world." Now, an idea and concept and bringing all of that together into reality is an entirely different matter. Imagine going to a bank and saying, "I want to borrow some money to build a distillery here in Tennessee, and I want to make rum." The bankers look at you and they say, "Well, there hadn't been a distillery in Tennessee in almost 50 years. And secondly, you're going to make what in Tennessee?" I said, "We're going to make rum." And needless to say, I could still hear them laughing behind my back as I walked out the door. So putting together a rum distillery in Tennessee required some thought and some ideas on how to bring the finances together, because if there's anything in this world that it's a capital intensive business, it's going into the distilling business. I want you to invest in my company, and by the way, it's going to be 3 to 5 years before we find out if the rum is any good or not. And the next thing we have to do is see if we can sell it. Making good rum is not that hard to do, but getting it out and getting it into the marketplace has been our single largest expense. We have worked for almost 10 years in bringing our products to market, and we are now in about 38 states. We have recently opened up our product in 2 European countries. We're targeting 8 for this year, and I think we're on track. So we're kind of proud of that. We like to talk about Kelso being world headquarters for Prichard's Distillery. But the short answer is that a distillery is a really, really tough business to get into, but I will tell you it's a lot of fun. Everywhere I go is a party. Well, the first thing that we got into, as we talked about, was getting into the rum business, and the techniques that we used. I've already explained one of my deep dark secrets, and that is we use premium table grade molasses to make our rum from. And the second element in our production is a very expensive process, and that is called aging. I think the cost of the barrel in aging product is probably the single largest expense that a distillery can incur. The usual size of a barrel is in the vicinity of 50 to 53 gallon barrels that most products are aged in. There is no criteria that says rum has to be aged in new charred oak barrels, but remember, our goal was to produce a premium quality rum, and we chose small 15 gallon barrels to age our product in, and they are charred oak barrels. And the cost of a small 15 gallon barrel versus the cost of a big 50 gallon barrel are pretty much the same, because a barrel is a barrel, and aging in a smaller barrel provides one major advantage to aging in a bigger barrel, and it's called surface to volume ratio. aging your product in a 15-gallon barrel, there's twice as much surface to volume ratio, but the product doesn't age twice as fast. The product ages exponentially faster. Our rums at 2 years of age bear the character of a much older product, more in the vicinity of 7 to 8, maybe 10 years of age, depending on where they're aging and where they're positioned in the warehouse and what have you. But when we chose to age our product in the small 15-gallon barrels, it really it speeded up that process of bringing our products to market. The next thing that makes a traditional American rum is the fact that it is distilled in pot stills. If you go to the major whiskey producers in this country, you'll find that they are aging their product. If you go to the producers of whiskey in this country, you'll find that they are distilling their product largely in a piece of equipment called a column still. A column still is also known as a continuous run still. In other words, these distilleries are spewing out whiskey in an unending stream, and the technology that's used to run those column stills is very, very different than the technology that was used to make rum and distilled spirits in America 200, 250 years ago. The pot still is in fact a batch production. We make a batch of rum today and a batch of rum tomorrow, and so on. The interesting thing about it is, having the pot stills, we have recently noticed that the trend towards brown spirits, particularly the bourbon whiskeys, Scotch whiskeys, malt whiskeys, rye whiskeys, and what have you, there has been a renewed interest in the last 3 to 5 years. And having the pot still here, we are pursuing a course to get us into the business of making whiskey. And we are going to make probably 3 types of whiskey. We will make a bourbon type Tennessee whiskey. We will probably make a malt whiskey, and also one of the things that we think there's going to be a good market for, especially in Europe, is a rye whiskey. The producers of rye whiskey in this world are very, there's not a lot of rye whiskey in the world, but we think that there's going to be a market for rye, and we hope to be on the front end of that curve.